What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media, bringing you Ravens content every single day. If you want to see that daily Ravens content, well, in this case, it's the NFL Draft. I'm coming out with a ton of content. 3 videos yesterday, probably going to have, I don't know, 4, right? 5 maybe even today. And then also have like 6, maybe 7, maybe even 8 videos tomorrow. So ton of content for the draft. So if you want to see that type of content, all my reactions, all my predictions, all my favorite players, please hit subscribe button down below. In this video, I'm going to be talking about day 2 and what my kind of realistic predictions / players that could be available / whether or not I think the Ravens can or should trade up, what that would cost, and then going over some players that I really like in the draft. As always, these are my opinions. I do not have to be the only Ravens fan that has opinions. Y'all let me know down in the comments down below what you think, what your opinions are, what your favorite day 2 players are, because we don't all have to agree, and it's totally okay if we disagree. But getting right into it, I'll first talk about kind of the ideas of trading up, because a lot of Ravens fans, when we traded that second round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs, it was like, it was really disappointing for a lot of people. But then people started to kind of theorize, all right, we're not taking 2 first-round picks. We're going to trade back, maybe get the Falcons pick, maybe get the Lions pick. We're going to trade back. We're not going to be taking 2 first-rounders. Well, okay, we didn't trade back. We drafted Odafe Away. Sorry, working on the name. And obviously we drafted Rashad Bateman. So then people are like, okay, we'll trade up into the second round. Eric DaCosta then came out and he was like, we're not really looking at trading up. So what does that mean? They're looking at trading up. Eric DaCosta throws people through a whirlwind, never says what he's actually doing. He plays 4D chess. While everybody else plays checkers. So he's a very, very good GM. There's a reason we say in EDC we trust. But I don't think that the Ravens will be trading up for a second round pick. I think that the value that they'd have to be trading would be a lot. And the players that are currently available aren't as worth it as, the players that could still be available in the third round. However, I will say, I think there is a very solid chance that the Ravens trade up in the third round and take an early third round pick rather than getting into that second round. I think that the players that could still be available, because you look at it, there's going to be at least one player available early in the third that slid, that is in a position of need, or just a very, very good player that the Ravens should go after. In terms of what the value would be of what trading up would cost, I would really expect the Ravens to spend probably their second, third round pick, as well as, I don't know, maybe a 5th round pick, potentially a 6th round pick if it's a later 3rd round pick than like really early. But that's kind of what I think it would cost. I would not be surprised whatsoever. Wouldn't be disappointed. In my opinion, I'm completely okay if the Ravens don't trade up. However, if a very, very good player does start to slide, I would definitely be, all in on trading up and drafting that player. But those are kind of my thoughts on just kind of the trading up aspect of it. But like, what are the players that I like? Now I'm going to get into those guys. I will not be going over every possible player. There's other guys that I like. I could go for 45 minutes right now and talk about every single player that I like, that I've looked at for the Ravens. These are just some of them. But comment different guys down below, because I will know the player. So if you comment a guy I might agree with you, I might disagree with you, but I will have an opinion. So let me know other players that I don't mention. Starting off at the center position, I think it's the biggest position of need right now, just because I'm very confident that the Ravens will sign an offensive tackle and an edge rusher in free agency. I think it'll be Villanueva in Houston. We'll see, but I think center's probably the biggest need right now, or the biggest hole. So guys at center, you look at who's been drafted. Nobody. This is very good. So in my opinion, in the NFL draft, I call them positional waterfalls. I don't know, maybe there's a better technical term name. I call them positional waterfalls. Basically, a player gets drafted at a certain position. Another player feels like they have a need at that position, and then they will immediately try and draft that same position. We see it with quarterbacks all the time. We see it with other positions. We saw it in the first round 3 times. The most obvious, clear and obvious, horrible pick was Travis Etienne at pick 25 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They did that because Pittsburgh Steelers, they ended up taking the running back out of Alabama, Najee Harris, at pick 24. Don't think Najee Harris was a bad pick. Don't think it was like a perfect pick, but I think it was a solid pick. But then the Jaguars, who already have a very good running back, they were like, well, we want a third down back. We like Travis Etienne. We got to get him. We got to get him. And they panicked. They took Travis Etienne. Bad pick, overdraft. But you see the positional waterfall. One guy goes, another guy follows. We saw the same thing with wide receiver. Jamar Chase goes. Who comes up right next? Jalen Waddle. Boom. I don't think it was like a bad pick, but like when one guy goes, you typically see another guy. Cornerback. What happened? J.C. Horn goes. Next pick, Patrick Surtain. The positional waterfall, everybody. So when a center gets picked, I believe another center will get picked very, very soon after. Now, the top two centers I think will be picked will be Creed Humphrey and Landon Dickerson. I think they're like the clear top two. Landon Dickerson, very, very good. Personally, don't draft Landon Dickerson, in my opinion. I'm too worried about the injury history. He's an absolute stud when he's on the field, but like offensive line play and injuries, don't want to deal with that whatsoever. So avoiding that as much as possible is really a draft strategy, in my opinion. So once one of those guys goes, I expect the other one to go pretty quickly. I would guess probably within even 5 picks or possibly 10 picks. Like, it'll be quick. They'll go off the board because once the top center's gone, people are like, I got to get me a center. Because there's really only about 5 centers in this year's draft that are like pretty solid. There's other guys, but 5 centers, in my opinion, that are like, all right, yeah, these guys can start like pretty quickly and they'll be very good. But then another guy is like a guy like Quinn Miners. Quinn Miners won't be available late in the 3rd round, but potentially he could be a trade-up possibility. Smaller school, played guard, but he translates to center, dominated at the Senior Bowl. I would love Quinn Miners. He was kind of like my guy. Him and Drake Jackson were my guys. Drake Jackson could be a potential day 3 pick. I'll definitely be talking about him tomorrow if we don't end up selecting center. But I like Quinn Miners. Could be a very solid pick, but we'd have to trade up and get him. I wouldn't be disappointed if we did it. Wouldn't be like my favorite pick ever, but I would completely understand it and accept it, and I think it would be a solid selection. But then, another position need offensive tackle. I think a lot of Ravens fans very upset we didn't go with Tevin Jenkins. Not me. I felt like the drop-off from edge rusher from 1st to 3rd round was much larger than that of the offensive tackles from Tevin Jenkins to guys like Walker Little. But, offensive tackle is still potentially a need, depending on if Alejandro Villanueva. Like, if we don't draft tackle like day 2, I think the Ravens are pretty darn confident that they're going to be able to sign Villanueva or the guy from Tennessee. Sorry, I just can never remember his name. But looking at the tackles that could be available, in round 3 for the Ravens, I already brought up Walker Little. Another guy could be Spencer Brown or Samuel Cosme. Basically, all big guys. The biggest one of them is Spencer Brown. But for me, Walker Little, I think, is the most intriguing. And this isn't just because I'm a Stanford fan. He's just played so little recently. Like, he opted out, got hurt. So for me, I would take Walker Little just because what I've seen from him. I've watched every Walker Little game. He is a stud when he plays. And like the injury history, it was like one injury. It wasn't like, repetitive things. He just opted out last season. So he wasn't able to play, but he is an absolute stud. And he would be a very good pick. But any of those guys I would be completely okay with picking, late in the 3rd round if they're available. There's other guys that could be available, but all those 3 guys I would be okay with. Very, very solid. But now let's get into kind of the more, fun positions, the positions that aren't maybe in need, but in the Ravens mentality, the best player available mentality, we got to look at the other positions. So first off, I'll start with Richie Grant. I've been in love with Richie Grant ever since I first had him in a mock draft. Safety out of UCF, absolute turnover machine. And you look at what the safeties have done in this draft so far. How many have been picked? 0. So the positional waterfall once again. The top 2 guys are, top 3 guys I would probably say are Trayvon Moehrig, Javon Holland, and then you could say Richie Grant, you could say Cisco. Those are probably like the 4 guys you could throw in there. But like, How many teams really need a safety? One of those guys could be falling down into the early third round. Don't think they'd be available late third down. These would be trade up players, but they could be very, very good in the trade up scenario. So if any of those players, Javon Holland, Richie Grant, Trayvon Moehrig will not fall to the early third round. But Andre Cisco, I believe it's Andre Cisco. I know his last name's Cisco. If any of those guys are able, I'd be okay. The guy I'd want most though is Richie Grant out of UCF. I just love him as a prospect, but they're all very solid players, and I'd be okay with any of them. And safety, I feel like, is a position that a lot of people have been like, this is a need. I don't see it as a big need. I do see, not corner, secondary as a need. So for me, like going, if we drafted any secondary player in the third round, I would actually be really okay with it. Just because I feel like Jimmy Smith can really do what Ladarius Webb did for the Ravens, transitioning over to safety and really kind of being that hybrid type. So if we ended up drafting a corner, we could shift Jimmy Smith to safety and still have that corner playing, good amount of playings or good amount of snaps and still having Jimmy Smith on the field. Obviously, we've had injury history at the slot cornerback position and those types of things. But then also if we drafted a safety, Jimmy Smith could stay on the outside and things like that. So just going secondary overall is a reasonable thing, in my opinion, in the third round. And I say this because my next guy is, ironically, Benjamin St. Juste, who's actually out of Minnesota, teammate of Rashad Bateman. He's just a big corner, great tackler, physical, and I think that he could be a very good fit in Baltimore, as a cornerback. But there's plenty of guys that the Ravens could go after in day three. I'm sorry, day two. Day three, there's way more guys that we could go after. But I wanted to give my quick thoughts on two guys that are not positional true needs, but then also give my rundown on the positions that I need. But if there's any players that you guys really want us to draft, let me know. I'll have reaction videos coming out whenever we do draft players. And thank you all for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content. It's the draft season, so in ADC we trust. Like the video if you like the video, and I'll see all of you again when we make a draft selection.